Okay, just a quick lesson, if you like, on capacity utilisation. Now, what that means is it's about, well, the examiner expects you to understand about operational targets, calculating and managing capacity utilisation, and how that allows you to link in with hitting deadlines and those sorts of things. Now, the video that I'm showing with this is in relation to, and I'm talking about this now because it's relevant, relation to Dyson taking up the orders for the ventilators. Now, I'm not sure if the Dyson factory involved is the one in Singapore, but if you read about this, he hasn't actually had the design signed off. He hasn't got the materials signed off. Well, I guess he says he's got everything lined up there, but the lead time, the lag to get anything from Singapore to here is weeks, not days, and he hasn't even started production yet. And I guess he hasn't got the resources in place to ramp it up to create the ventilators we need. And so that's about capacity utilisation. He's going to go from 0, I assume, up to 100%. But what you guys need to do is be able to, in the exam, not only understand it, but be able to calculate it. So capacity utilisation, so I'm all bunged up and everything, is the maximum output that a business can achieve over a period of time. So 100 units per day, 1,000 units per week, a million per year. Tesla's a good example at the moment with his capacity utilisation. He had a period of time where he was really struggling with it, and he seems to have ramped it up. And if, again, you read about it, you'll see that he's potentially using some cutting edge manufacturing techniques to allow him to achieve so many units. Capacity utilisation itself is always as a percentage, the percentage of total capacity that a business is able to achieve. Now, in the exam, if you're told that they are running at 60% capacity utilisation, you could make assumptions that seems quite low, but unless you've got something to compare it to, you don't know whether that's good or bad. So in the exams, you tend to get company A is running at 60%, company B is at 70%, company C is at 80%. And if you're talking about company A, then you can quite see that they're running under capacity compared with the competition, and you might have to work out why or look at why from the case study. I've dropped in a lesson and everything, so the equation's there, but it's essentially, it's a percentage equation. So it's the actual level of output over the maximum possible times by 100, and then that gives you your data. Now, the examiner's not going to be nice and just probably give it you in a straight bit of text or on a table. You might get one bit of information in the table, you might get one bit of information in the text. So you're going to have to look for it. And then it's just working out the maths. Can you please always make sure you put the percentage symbol on afterwards? If you don't, you're going to lose credit. Now, it's down to you, as I've said, to, especially now, to be using time at the present moment to be looking for any examples of capacity utilisation. So in the little PowerPoint, I talk about Swindon being able to, I'm just looking at their produced 250,000 cars, has a capacity of 250,000 cars and builds 630 per day. Now, 630 per day sounds like a huge amount of cars, but you can work out that if they're doing if they can produce 250,000 a year and they're producing 650, then that's the sort of maths the examiner's going to get you to do. So you times 630 times the number of days in a year, that'll give you a total figure, and then from there you'll be working out what the capacity utilisation is. And it's around 92%, or it used to be. And that's the sort of stuff that you guys have to do. You have to be aware of why it matters. It's a measure of productivity. How are you doing against the competition? Economies of scale, the more you produce, that's the closer to capacity, to full capacity you are, then it tends to be that your lower average per unit costs, or your lower cost per unit tend to drop. And so they're going to try and achieve as close to 100 as possible for finance reasons. Now, sometimes you'll produce less than that because if, like I said in the text on this, if you're seasonal demand orientated, then there'll be periods of the year where you don't need to be under so much pressure, and then there'll be periods where you are. There's lots of industries like that, and it's not just banging out machinery or stuff like that. There's other industries. Sometimes you might want a bit of slack. You just might run at 90% capacity just in case you've got something wrong. You know, there are certain industries which supposedly run at 102% capacity. So the aviation industry, you know, they assume that so many passengers will not turn up or will miss the desk. And so they run at 102% capacity in the hope or the desire that someone will just miss the flight, but they still go with a full seat. And then obviously some companies will run with lower capacity because they're just inefficient. They're not very good. So they need to run low so they've got time to repair stuff. Some industries will run at over 100% capacity. So the Royal Mail during Christmas, increase work hours, take on more people, subcontracts, you know, you get the idea. And also, if you've got like Tesla, I guess, you've got new machinery and it's all running smoothly, you can run at full or above capacity just to try and keep up with demand. And I've said it about work before. Last year, they asked us all told us all to do 1 extra hour per week teaching. It didn't seem like a lot to a lot of people, but that increased the capacity utilisation of teachers in our place. The downside, and I was starting to see it, not quality was being held fast, but employees were starting to suffer. Potentially, you know, lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson. Some guys doing what you could almost call, what we'd call a 15 period 3 days, which is essentially 15 lessons in a row, no break. I know that's what you guys do, but as a teacher, there's no time for catching your breath, doing a little bit of paperwork, a little bit of marking, not at home, but within the school day, you get the idea. And that can, in the longer term, if you do that long term, can cause demotivation effects. So there are reasons not to push your workforce or machinery, because obviously it'll break, but people can break as well in the long term. And so capacity utilisation is important. I've done it now rather than a little bit ahead because it links to the kit that's needed in the NHS with the pandemic at the moment. So it links in nice with the video. Okay. Have a good day. Cheers.